Okay, this is lesson 3 review on quadratics. Just make sure we have some terminology, go through a couple of things. Right, axis of symmetry is the line that cuts the graph in half. Vertex we'll either call a maximum or a minimum. Right, that's at the top or at the bottom of the curve, maximum or minimum. And then the three forms that we want to talk about today: vertex form, which tells us the vertex; general form, which tells us the y-intercept; and factored form, which we also call intercept form, gives us the two x-intercepts. Remember, inside parentheses for both the factored form and the vertex form, the x is always opposite the sign that you see. So this would be x-intercept of a, and this would be an x-intercept of negative b. Right, when we're doing this, we're going to go through, it's going to be basically this format where first we're going to find, or we're going to look to find the x-intercepts, and we do that by making y0. Find the y-intercept, we do that by making x equal to 0. When I'll take a look at the graph, see if it is if it's opening down or if it's opening up. Right, if it's opening down, then we have a maximum value. If it's opening up, like this one, then we have a minimum value. Right, and we're going to do most of this on the calculator so we can see, and we're also going to use the table to try to find some other points just so we can get a good drawing of the thing. Right, so if we want to use a table, right, what we'll do is we'll type this equation into our calculator, and then we'll find the vertex, right, and we'll put the vertex in the middle of the table, and we'll just do a couple numbers below and above that, and then that'll help us fill out our table. Right, so our first one, right, we had a blank screen. I'm going to go to y equals, and our first equation that we just had there is 0.5 x squared minus 2x minus 3. And the first thing I usually do is I just hit zoom, and then I go to option 6. Alright, zoom standard, or just press 6. Right, that's going to give me a picture of my graph. Okay, I see my vertex is going to be in here somewhere. So I'm just going to do second calc, and then this is a minimum value, so we do option 3. We go a little bit to the left of our vertex, hit enter. We scroll to the right of our vertex, we hit enter, and then we have the calculator guess. Right, it tells me that my vertex is at 2, negative 5. So then I'm going to go look in my table, right, and I see here's my vertex here at 2, 5. And so I'm just going to pick the two numbers below that, like we're technically above that, 3 and 4, and the numbers below that are 1 and 0, and then just plug those numbers into my table. So over here we have, we just write down the values in the table, and we can take those points, put them on our graph, and start to get the shape of our graph. We're also going to want to use the key points, right? Making sure we get the vertex, we want the x-intercepts and the y-intercepts if it's possible. Yeah. So let's try this one. So we have x squared plus 6x plus 5. And for me, I like to get the vertex first. So I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to go to y equals. And our equation, just clear this one out. Our equation was x squared plus 6x plus 5. Right, just see if we get a picture for that. Zoom 6. Right, there's our graph. We can see our vertex is going to be in here somewhere. So we'll do second calc, and in this case, again, we have a minimum value. We're going to scroll until we get to the left side of our vertex. Hit enter and scroll till we get to the right side of our vertex and hit enter. Now that tells me, and then we have the calculator guess, so our vertex is at -3, -4. To fill out my table, I'm going to go over, take a look at the table. Right, there's my value, -3. So then I go add in -4 and -5, -2 and -1, and I can see from this that when the y value is 0, this is my x-intercept. So I see my 2x intercepts already as well. And then I can see my y-intercept is when x is 0, so the y-intercept is at 5. So we're going to come back over here, and then we could fill in our table. Right, there's our table that we just had. We can take those points, plug them onto our graph. We get those points there. Now we can also, we've already established that our vertex here is, or the x-intercepts are at -5, 0 and -1, 0. We said that the vertex was at 0, 5, and the shape of this graph opens up, and we said the vertex was -3, -4. I just want to show you real quick that it may not be in the table. So if we want to find the x-intercept, we'll go back to our graph. Right, if we want to find this x-intercept to make sure it's at 0, we do second calc, and we choose option 2. Option 2 is 0. Right, and then we scroll to the left side of that x-intercept, press enter. Scroll to the right side of that x-intercept and press enter, and it is indeed at -5, 0. Right, so the other one we already know is at 1, 0, but we could do that same process for both. Right, on the next problem, right, this one is in factored form. Remember, factored form tells us the x-intercept, so I can look at this and say, oh, the x-intercept is at +1 and -5. We can also just do it by setting each factor equal to 0 and solving for x. We can also go into our calculator. Oops, that's not the calculator. Right, go into our calculator, go back into this y equals screen, and we're going to type in our equation x minus 1, close parentheses, open new parentheses, x plus 5. All right, let's see what that looks like. All right, it's our parabola that's opening up. I want to go and I want to find the vertex. So let's do second calc, and then again, since it's opening up, then we have a minimum value, so that's option 3. Scroll to the left side of our vertex, press enter, scroll to the right side of the vertex, press enter, have the calculator guess, and it tells us our vertex is at -2, -9. So then I'm going to go over to my table, and look at my table, and we have -2, 9 as our vertex. I can see that the x-intercept of -5 because y is 0, and an x-intercept of 1 because y is 0. When x is 0, I get -5, so my y-intercept is at -5. You can go through and you can calculate, with the second calc 0 to get these x-intercepts, or you can use the way that it looks and set each factor equal to 0 to get the x-intercepts. And then in many cases, those x-intercepts are going to be easily identified in the table. But if they're not, then you have to either solve it or use the calculator to do the second calc 0. So we get this information in our table, and then we take that information and we transpose it onto a graph so that we can draw it out and see what it looks like on paper.